Hello and welcome to Berwick Court School Reading Workshop for Parents, led by myself, Michelle Robertson, I'm Deputy Head Teacher and the English Leader at Berwick Court School. So, my first question to you is, why is reading important? We talk about it all the time at school. It's something that we are always going on about. We're always talking about with the children. Why is it so important? The truth is, reading is the most important skill that a child needs. Reading builds their language, their communication, their confidence, children's self-esteem, their understanding of the world around them, their concentration, their imagination, their creativity, and their knowledge. Reading for pleasure is more likely to determine whether a child does well at school than any other life factor. Children who read for pleasure are more likely to succeed in achieving their ambitions throughout school and into adulthood. Reading also has huge lifelong benefits for adults too. It's proven through research that adults who read for pleasure have more mental stimulation, have reduced stress, have improved memory, have improved mental health and well-being, have more professional success and are less likely to develop dementia in later life. There's lots of research into reading, and here's a recent piece of research that I just wanted to share with you from the Education Endowment Fund for improving literacy. Good literacy skills provide us with the building blocks not just for academic success, but for fulfilling careers and rewarding lives. Good literacy skills, the ability to read, write and communicate confidently, are foundational to all learning. They unlock access to all areas of the curriculum, enable students to discover and pursue their talents and interests. In short, reading is the most accurate indicator of a child's success at school. Children who can read fluently and confidently and who choose to read for pleasure are more successful in all areas of school life. So think about how many words you know. We use words all day long when we're talking, when we're reading, when we're writing. We've accumulated a vast store of vocabulary and it's so integral to our day-to-day communication. We barely notice the range of words that we use. There are well over 1 million words in the English language. We can't possibly know them all or use them all the time. But at Berwick Court, we strive to help pupils achieve a word hoard that's needed to thrive in school and beyond. The size of a child's vocabulary is a good indicator for their success across the whole curriculum at school and their ability to understand and unlock the whole curriculum. Did you know around 2,000 words make up 80% of our daily spoken language, and as parents you play a huge role in the development of your child's language and vocabulary. So my question to you, how many words do children need to know by the time they leave primary school? And that is need to know in order to be able to independently and confidently access all of the secondary school curriculum, to be able to articulate their thoughts, their understanding and their needs. Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Or is it 50,000? We should aim for every child to leave school with a working vocabulary of at least 50,000 words by the end of year 6. So what percentage of words do you think needs to be known in a text and understood in order to understand what they've read for reading comprehension? Here's a text which is it's approximately 75% of the language you can see. This text is explaining, it's a definition of a process, scientific process. To ensure comprehension, that's true understanding, the percentage of words that needs to be known in a text is approximately 95%. For comfortable comprehension, understanding without you having to really work at it, this can rise to up to 95% depending on the subject matter. So here you've got 75% of the vocabulary. Can you identify the process that is being described here? Something is marking a something on a measuring something. This involves something, the relationship between something of a measuring something and something, or something, which must be something. For example, placing something in melting ice to see whether it reads 0, to check it has been something correctly. Now, if you were presented with that as a child, the words that you can read are quite common, but they're also quite generic. They're words that you would see quite often: between, this, and, which, must, see, check, been. Most of those words are kind of common vocabulary. The only real clues you're getting there is something to do with measuring, perhaps something to do with measuring temperature, because it's talking about melting ice. You can try to gauge from the context, but when you're reading at 75% accuracy, it's still virtually impossible for a child to gather the meaning there. So here's the same piece of text with 95% of the words known to you. Can you work out the scientific process that's being described now? Something is marking a scale on a measuring instrument. This involves establishing the relationship between indications of a measuring instrument and standard or reference values which must be applied. For example, placing a thermometer in melting ice to see whether it reads 0 to check it has been something correctly. The word is calibration, calibrated. Calibration is marking a scale on a measuring instrument. For example, placing a thermometer in melting ice to see whether it reads 0 to check if it has been calibrated correctly. If you take an average page in a textbook or non-fiction book with approximately, say, 300 words on a page, for 95% accuracy, that would still leave 15 words on each page that are unknown and not understood by the reader. If you have a confident reader in year 5 or year 6, say they read 10 to 12 novels a year, this equates to approximately 20,000 unfamiliar words a year that they would come across. 20,000 words a year that they didn't know or didn't understand. So here is an extract from a year 6 SATs paper. This was the 2016 Key Stage 2 SATs reading paper. It was a controversial one in schools due to the challenging nature of it. This is one small extract of a larger text. Imagine your child, age 11, in a test situation. This is part of one of 3 texts that the children had to read in that reading paper. It was a timed situation. They had to read the text, understand it, answer questions related to it. The complexity of language expected by the age of 11 is huge, and without broad vocabulary and a wider understanding of having read lots of different books, having a wider understanding of the world around them, their chances of working independently at this level, at this pace, reduce significantly. Most children don't develop the ability to read without direct teaching. It's a challenging combination of skills which takes years to master. Children need both language comprehension and good word reading to become good readers. This model here shows you the simple view of reading. It's a simplified version of how those skills can come together. So going across the horizontal, we've got word recognition, ranging from poor word recognition up to good word recognition. And your child could be anywhere on that scale. And as you see children moving through Key Stage 1, particularly as their phonics skills grow, they slide along that scale and move from poor word recognition up to good word recognition. On the vertical there, we've got language comprehension. Language comprehension going from poor at the bottom all the way up to good at the top. And imagine the children could be in different quadrants on this simple view of reading. So you could have a child who has very good word recognition processes and very good language comprehension. You could have a child who has really good language comprehension but poor word recognition. So they can't read the words on the page necessarily, they struggle to decode them, but they can understand either what they're reading or what is read to them. You find that a lot with younger readers, that their ability to understand a book and language is much higher, much stronger than their ability to actually read and decode words. Could have a child who has good word recognition but poor language comprehension. They could read and decode all the words on the page, but actually they haven't got that understanding of what they're reading. And then there are children who have poor word recognition and poor language comprehension. Understanding how these processes are interlinked and are dependent upon each other is really helpful in getting a view of what your child needs in order to develop as a reader, what their next steps are and what we need to prioritise. In the early part of the school, in reception and Key Stage 1, Year 1 particularly, we focus very much on word recognition through our teaching of phonics. It's really important. Only once they've got that fluency, that ability to read the majority of words on the page to them, have they got a chance of then comprehending and understanding what they've read? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't expect them to understand texts. That's why reading to the children is so important. The future success of our pupils rests predominantly on their ability to become proficient and fluent readers. Being able to read unlocks all areas of the curriculum, and not being able to read is a barrier to everything. A barrier to science, a barrier to maths, English, history is a barrier to communicating confidently and effectively. All areas of the curriculum suddenly become much harder to access if you can't read fluently and proficiently. So how do we teach and promote reading at Berwick Court School? It's something that I'm very passionate about particularly, but it's something that we talk about as a school a lot. So phonics is a primary strategy for teaching word recognition. It's the best approach that works for the most children most of the time. Alongside this, pupils learn to read sight vocabulary. They learn their tricky words, they learn flashcards, so that they can recognise those words that are not phonetically decodable quickly. The reading scheme that we have is carefully designed to support pupils to progressively build and apply their phonic knowledge and their sight vocabulary, and those two skills work together to enable them to become fluent readers. In early years in Key Stage 1, pupils develop their language and communication skills. They talk at every opportunity to help build that vocabulary, and they listen to stories daily. We have multiple story times throughout the day of stories that are more complicated than the children could read themselves to build that vocabulary, language, and those comprehension skills. Here's an overview of our reading scheme for you. So you'll be very familiar with the colour bands that the children move through the school as they go through the school. And when we get to Key Stage 2, they move to levels. We follow the Oxford University Press colour banding scheme. So all our books are from Oxford University Press, and they follow a progressive pattern of slowly increasing the sight vocabulary, the range of stories that they have. We've got fiction and non-fiction. They get progressively more challenging. This table just outlines for you the average expectation of where children should be, where the majority of children should be at the end of each academic year on the reading scheme. So language comprehension is a really important skill alongside that word recognition, as we've talked about. Talking about what children are reading is hugely important, especially once they become more fluent readers, to make sure that, yes, they can decode what's on the page, but can they actually understand it? We do this in lots of ways in school, through guided reading, through discussing what children are reading, and it's something that we always often say to you as parents: talk about what they're reading, ask them lots of questions, and sometimes you might not be sure about what questions you could ask them. Vipers is quite a good little mnemonic to help you remember different types of questions that are practicing different types of skills. So V for vocabulary, you might be getting them to understand, what does a particular word mean? There might be a new word that they've come across when they're reading. What does that mean? Can you tell me another word that means the same? Can you tell me a word that means the opposite of that? Can you put that word in a sentence? Have you heard that word in any other context? Building and strengthening their vocabulary. Inferring means what things are inferred in the story that are not immediately obvious. So it might be that you have, I'm thinking of a very rudimentary example here, that you might have children in the garden playing in t-shirt and shorts. An inference question that you might discuss then is, what season do you think it is and why? Well, it's not immediately obvious or apparent in the text. It doesn't say that written down, it doesn't say it is summer or written down, but the children are inferring from what they understand about what they've read meanings that are not explicit. Predicting is a really important skill. What do you think is going to happen next, and crucially, why? What evidence have you got from what you've already read that gives you clues as to what might happen next, or how that character might behave, knowing what we know about them, how they've behaved already so far. Explaining what they understand already from what they have read. Retrieving, information retrieval is a really important skill, and that really helps you do a quick check on their comprehension of. Retrieval is, there's something explicit that's obvious there in the text that they have read, and can they just retrieve that information from their reading? And sequencing, can they put the events of the story in order and recall them and make sure that there's some chronology and sequence there. That really helps filter into their writing as well. As a school, we work really hard to develop a culture of reading, and this starts with carefully planned core texts throughout every year group. We have a text map that maps out a range of different texts from, we focus on different authors, making sure we've got a range of culturally diverse authors, we've got different genres of writing, we've got some modern stories, we've got some traditional classic stories. We're keeping abreast of different books that are coming out all of the time. High quality texts are planned to give them a real range of genres, styles, and to enhance and enrich our curriculum. The books that are chosen to focus our core English on are intended to kind of complement the wider curriculum that's going on in the class. And they're progressively more difficult as they go through the school. Often, in Key Stage 2 particularly, children will study one text for a whole term. And it's quite common now that we're asking parents to buy a copy of that text so your child has their own copy, so that they can either do some pre-reading, they can reread stuff that they've looked at in class to help build their confidence with that and their understanding. They can read ahead a little bit sometimes. Having their own copy of the text can really, really help that. But having those high quality texts really helps to build that culture of reading and exposing the children to different authors and different styles of books that they wouldn't necessarily have chosen before. Here you can see a selection of books which are being used in school this year. Most of them this term, some next term. A culture of reading is threaded through our library. Our library is really carefully stocked. It's hugely supported by parents. It's primarily stocked with parental donations. So the library, all the Key Stage 2 library books were bought through parental donations and the PTA matching donations from parents. And we have a team of very eager librarians who take their role very seriously in recommending books, in organising the books. They suggest books to children. They sit in the library at lunchtimes and read with other children. The library is a really important place to promote reading for pleasure and a joy of books, fiction, non-fiction and poetry. In every class, we have drop everything and read sessions every day where we just focus on reading for pleasure, where the children have a class novel that complements what they're studying in English, that they just drop everything and they read. Adults in school read to the children and they just sit and listen to the story. That happens all the way through from early years right up to year 6. We've got online reading through Oxford Owl. We also have a class set of Kindles so the children can read ebooks in school. And we have special book events like World Book Day. The book sale we had recently was a huge success and really got a buzz about books going around the school. We've got an author visits that we've got one planned in later this term. We also work really closely with Windsor and Maidenhead Library Service to enhance the reading material in school. We buy in topic boxes with books that support and enhance our curriculum. And activities like the Summer Reading Challenge really help with that. The most important thing you can do to support your child's learning is reading. Reading to them and reading with them every single day. In school, we have 30 children in a class, sometimes 32 in some classes. In my class, for example, we read with each child individually once a week, 5 minutes at a time. That's all we can manage to do. We don't have capacity for more individual reading than that. We read as a whole class, we read as a group, we do additional reading all the time. But one-to-one focused reading with your child, we can't facilitate more than once a week. We need your help. We're doing as much as we can, particularly off the back of COVID, where we're trying to close gaps of missed learning. But on its own, it just isn't enough to make a difference. And we have seen a decline in children reading at home since COVID. Research document produced by the DFE recently found that the average pupil had lost between 1.8 months and 2.2 months of progress in reading as a result of the pandemic. Fortunately, we have a really strong reading culture in our school and the majority of our children did keep reading while they were at home. But it's been shown that it can take up to half a term of targeted intervention and catch-up to recover just 2 weeks of lost progress. That means to recover 2 months of lost progress from school closure could take 5 months to make those gains back. So how can you help as parents? Give your children the opportunity to read for pleasure. Support and encourage reading outside school as much as you can. Be a role model for them. Let them see you talking about books. Let them see you reading books. And it doesn't have to be a big novel. It could be all sorts of different reading material. So here's some ideas of things that you can do at home to help encourage and support reading. Make books part of your family life. Always have books around you so that you and your children are ready to read whenever there's a chance. Give them access to books. Join the local library. They have a huge array of books that you can borrow, DVDs, audiobooks as well, for free. Match their interests. Think about the right book for your child. It doesn't matter if it's fiction, poetry, comic books or non-fiction, whatever gets your child hooked. Magazines, newspapers, all reading is good. Graphic novels, magazines, leaflets, fiction, comics. Reading is reading, and any reading is good. Find a comfortable space, a little book nook or a reading corner. Snuggle up somewhere warm and cosy, in bed or on a beanbag, on the sofa. Make sure they've got somewhere comfy when they're reading. Ask them questions and talk about books. Keep them interested in the story. What do you think is going to happen next? Where did we get to last night? What happened yesterday? Read whenever you get the chance. Bring along a book or a magazine anytime your child has to wait or go on a journey, in the car or in a restaurant, for example. Pack them a book. Read again and again. Encourage your child to reread favourite books and poems. So often with reading books, particularly in Key Stage 1, you might only have 2 or 3 books to last you the week, and they're not particularly lengthy books. There is a huge amount of value in children rereading books. It really builds their confidence. It really builds their fluency in them reading a book more than once. We intentionally reread stories during our story sessions in school that the children have already read. You can see their enjoyment with it, and then they start to predict what's going to happen next. They start to join in with repeated phrases and familiar phrases. So don't be afraid to reread books over and over again. Bedtime stories are so important. It's a great way to end the day, spend valuable time with your child, and to really help get them relaxed, get them calm, and for them to see reading and a bedtime story as a really pleasurable, nice thing to do at the end of the day. Rhyme and repetition. Books and poems, which include rhyme and repetition, are a great way to encourage your child to join in and to remember the words in a story, particularly classics like Julia Donaldson. She's really great at that. Lots of rhyming, repetition and poetry as well. And we just want to say to you, our message from us to you is just keep reading. Keep reading to your children. Encourage your children to read every day. It is the most important thing that you can do, and it will make the most difference. Above all else, reading will make a difference. Thank you so much for listening.